The only thing, well, it should be fun. Yeah, there we go. The only thing you really need to know about this section is just a very few characters. One is Queen Miriamele, who is the grandmother of Morgan, who we just heard about in the last section. The other is Jeza. Jeza is a young woman who has become very important to Miriamele, in part because with her they escaped from a terrible time in the south, and then Jeza later saved Miriamele, who had been kidnapped by a very unpleasant character. There's also a little baby, Saracina. Saracina doesn't do much, but just so you know that who that name belongs to. And also Captain Fincher. Because Miriamele and Jeza are on a boat coming up the river toward the Hayholt, which of course was the seat of Miriamele and King Simon. But she has been gone for part of a year. She thinks Simon is dead. Coincidentally, he's not, but he thinks Miriamele is dead. This is called dramatic irony. Very useful tool. The readers know, the characters do not. Okay, but that's what's going on. They're on a boat coming up the river, heading back to the castle, the Hayholt, and things have changed at the Hayholt, although these characters do not know it. Chapter 1, They Bite Fierce. Fincher, the captain of the Elysiumanza, was a thick, bewhiskered man with a maimed left hand. He spoke surprisingly softly most of the time, except to his crew, at whom he bellowed like a madman about what seemed to Jeza the most mundane shipboard matters. 3 bells! He would howl so loudly that Jeza had to move away from him. Wear that bar! And when she would try to make her way from one end of the pitching ship to the other, he would sometimes shout, What's the wet deck, m'lady? So loudly from right behind her that she could have sworn he had crept up on her just to do it. For someone who had spent much of her life in and around boats, Jeza was finding it difficult to enjoy the voyage. The cog on which she and the queen sailed, along with quite a few fighting men and almost as many sailors, who seemed always up in the ropes, whistling like birds and swinging like monkeys, the boat rose up in the front and the back so far that it almost dizzied Jeza to look over the bow rail at the churning river below. In her childhood, the boats had all been low, flat things, usually poled or rowed by one person, and so low that the younger Jeza could even trail her hand in the green ran waters, at least until her father or uncles reminded her about the crocodiles. On the second day, Jeza joined Miriamele and Captain Fincher on the high castle-shaped structure at the rear of the ship, which end she had learned was called the stern. Since she had little Saracina in her arms, Jeza kept her feet planted solidly on the deck and well away from the ship's rail. Why are they rowing when yesterday the sail was up? She asked the captain. I can feel wind, and it seems no less strong. Ah, there's a good question, m'lady, said Fincher in a gentle, serious voice. The answer is simple enough. Yesterday, we set sail with the sea tide under us. Today, we must row upriver because the Glenouent, the current, is against us. Hoy! He suddenly shouted, making Jeza jump. Be shrew me, what are you about? Mind that yard! He saw her put her hand to her pounding heart and was all apologies. So sorry, m'lady, Meant no harm. Just those be damned skiving sailors. He made a fretful face. Oh, sorry for the cursing, Your Majesty. It's not often we have the tender ears of royalty on board. In fact, it's never happened before. Do not worry, Captain, said Miriamele. You should hear my husband when he is in a rage. Once Archbishop Gervas fainted dead away at one of Simon's outbursts. Her smile faltered. Jeza quickly said to Captain Fincher, if I am not impolite to ask, sir, what happened to your hand? Fincher looked at the extremity in question for a moment as if he had nearly forgotten it. The two smaller fingers were gone, puckered lumps of flesh all that remained. Ah, that. Well, m'lady, it were a rope. They bite fierce, especially when they're tied to a sinking anchor. Begging your pardons and hoping that weren't too unpleasant to speak about. She asked, Captain, said Miriamele. No need to apologize. He nodded and thanked her, then made his excuses, bowed low to the Queen, and stumped down the stairs to upbraid the oarsmen in a voice like a war horn. Miriamele was silent for a while, but before Jeza could summon up a subject of conversation to distract her from her sorrows, the Queen said, And how is the little one? Is she feeding well? Yes, Majesty. Many people in Mermond told me sea air improves the appetite, and it seems true for her, but not for me. She shook her head. She had been sick several times the day before, and the only reason the pitching voyage had not sent her to the rail again was that her stomach was empty. It's not sea air, though, said the Queen. It's river air here, since we're on the river. I don't know if that works the same way. She sighed. It is so slow traveling against the current. It will be dark long before we reach Storm Cove in the Kinslaw. Jeza did not know anything about either Storm Cove or the broad Kinslaw itself, of which the cove was just a nick in the shoreline. But she knew that was the place Miriamele planned to leave the ship before advancing on the castle with soldiers. She had wondered why they would not simply berth at one of the castle docks, until she realized that Miriamele did not expect a friendly welcome. How strange, Jeza thought, for a queen to come home after most of a year and expect not a welcome from her admiring subjects, but an attack by those left to protect the place. Miriamele was stroking Saracina's small head where the blanket exposed it. I must have been mad to let you talk me into this arrangement, she said, then gave Jeza a shrewd look. I know you would not leave the baby unless you had to, but why were you so bent on coming with me? Jeza thought for a moment before answering. Because I trust no one else. The Queen was surprised. What do you mean? Back at Merriman, the others would have treated you well, as would many, especially with you under my protection. And did you not trust Duchess Canthea and the others in Naban? Jeza was concerned. Oh, Saracina is Duchess Canthea's, the late Duchess Canthea's child. Jeza was concerned that she had confused the Queen, but she was not entirely certain she understood it herself. So she did her best to order her thoughts before replying. I trusted them not to hurt me, Majesty. I trusted Canthea because I was her friend since we were children, though she forgot that sometimes. At the thought of her friend and mistress, tears came to her eyes. Holding Saracina with both arms, she could not wipe them. A moment later, to Jeza's astonishment, the queen reached out and gently rubbed the tears away with the back of her finger. You loved the Duchess, didn't you? Of course. She was a good person. She did not deserve. And then the tears came again, this time in floods. At last she handed the baby to Miriamele so she could wipe her eyes properly. I am sorry, Majesty. Nothing to apologize for. But you still haven't answered my question. Why do you trust me more than anyone else? Because, Jeza, queens, rulers in general, are notoriously bad risks for trust. For one thing, we seldom see people as individuals because we are always thinking of them as subjects, as a nation. But that is it, Jesus said. You are not that way. Everyone in Naban saw me as a servant, or as Kantia's childhood friend, or as a woman from the Rand. Not one of them ever looked at me and saw me. Miriamele looked skeptical. If you are saying I saw the truth of who you really are, Jeza, I'm afraid you are mistaken. Only in the time we have spent together have I come to know how clever and brave you are. But you did not make a mask for me to wear. I don't understand. Jeza was frustrated. She had set out to tell the queen how much she respected her, but had made a muddle of things. It is what we say in the Ran, or at least on Red Pig Lagoon, my home, when someone thinks they know a person before they do. That you never did, Majesty. When you met me, you did not see just another servant, just a dark-skinned girl from the swamp. What you did not know at first, you waited to find out. That is rare. The queen looked at her for a long time. And to think Westerling is your second language. You astonish me, Jeza, and you shame me, too. I would like to believe I am the person that you think I am. I would admire such a person, too. But I am afraid I am far more flawed than that. Jeza laughed, which is just what such a person always says when others praise them. Do you see what I mean? Said Miriamele, and now she was smiling, too. You are too clever by half. She started to hand back Saracina, then stopped long enough to plant a kiss on the child's half-exposed forehead. Look at her on a ship in a country she's never been in, and she's just sleeping like a crocodile, said Jeza. Miriamele laughed, startled. I was going to say like a baby, but it seemed too obvious. Do crocodiles sleep a lot? They pretend. It looks like they are asleep, but truly they are watching. I don't think Saracina is pretending to be asleep. I know. Jeza smelled the baby, whispered a few words to her before turning to the queen again. And anyway, she will not bite. No teeth yet. Mary sighed. It's hard to wait. I want to see my home again. I want to see my people again. She shook her head as if to clear away cobwebs. Enough of that. How do you fare? Do you think you could eat something? Jeza shuddered. Not yet, but the baby will be hungry soon. I could use a little something myself. Let's go see what Captain Fincher has to offer us.